Amnesia: The Bunker is a first-person survival horror game where you take control of Henri Clement, a French soldier in the trenches of World War I, who wakes up in a bunker to realise he's trapped inside it with a terrible beast. The game is available on PlayStation 4, PC, and Xbox One. Atmosphere. With the harrowing setting of World War I as a backdrop, the game's opening is as bleak as the colour palette suggests, and as you awaken in the bunker, it gets even worse. Near pitch-black corridors with murky brown walls from the earth and cement inflict this feeling of claustrophobia. The corridors are full of dead bodies of soldiers who fought and died against the monster, and there's an eerie silence to them sometimes that's disconcerting. You're meant to find a way to escape, but it's made very apparent from the beginning of the game that you aren't alone, and the monster you're trapped inside with can hear you, which leads to the atmosphere being mostly of paranoia and dread, crawling under boxes and vents to get into the next area to find useful items. It feels like you're being pushed downwards from the weight of the seemingly hopeless task ahead. Every scraped object on the floor, every creak from a broken piece of wood invokes a guttural groaning from the monster in the walls, and it's almost upsetting that you can't seem to do anything quietly. You're being listened to, constantly. It's nerve-wracking and stress-inducing to think that any mistake you make will bring it out the walls, and when the generator runs out of fuel then the place is sunk into darkness. There's a lot of things to manage, from the fuel to bandages to bullets in your gun, on top of staying as quiet as possible, and thanks to this the atmosphere manages to stay on an unbelievable high for an unpleasant amount of time with little to no respite. And whilst activating the generator and powering on the lights eases things for a little, since the monster is less likely to attack with the corridors illuminated, it doesn't stick to these rules and you are never truly safe. The later game struggles to keep the atmosphere going, with the monster's appearance really becoming so frequent that it's tiresome, but by the end of the game it does bring it back again. The bunker is brutal and unforgiving, like the monster contained within. That's one Harry Mason. Scares. The main focus is stealth, and the fear comes almost always from you being heard. The game is essentially you alone in the bunker with the monster, locked in a game of cat and mouse, and you are doomed to constantly antagonize the cat so that you can escape it. The scares and the sound design blend together, since making noise is inviting death, but some of the fear comes from knowing that you need to do something loud to get into a room, but doing so will paint a target on your back. The monster responds directly to loud noises, enticing it out of the walls even in a well-lit area to a loud enough noise. But even smaller noises help it pinpoint your location when it's hunting you. Bumping into items and activating your flashlight is often met with a loud, deterring roar. It hears you. The game doesn't really have scripted events or jump scares, but it has a loud, explosive reminder that the war still rages outside, with shelling noises randomly interjecting things, which never fail to catch me by surprise. Whilst everyone's playthrough will result in different outcomes and scenarios based on the randomized elements of the game, death is something you'll experience a lot, and it does get a little tiring. Since the game uses a central safe room, you'll have to travel the halls over and over, since death means losing all your progress and returning to the safe room each time, retaining nothing if you left and didn't come back. And the game randomizes items, which results in a lot of frustrating trial and error, with it being uncertain what rooms are worth alerting the monster to enter. Using a grenade to blast open a door and finding nothing can be devastating, and now you've got the monster hunting you. The game can be completely terrifying, especially near the start, but death cycles are something that can very much happen in the game, especially if you aren't sure how to solve a problem or the resources you're after can't be found. The random elements and mechanics can be frustrating, but your mileage may vary. Overall, it's still a terrifying experience. That's 2 Harry Masons. Sound design. The soundtrack is mostly dark, foreboding ambient pieces, groans and bellowing howls like wind escaping the gates of hell. There's an ancient feeling to some of them, with a high-pitched discordant whistle that accompanies them, nails on a chalkboard that echo out of a tomb. Other pieces sound maddening, an elongated wail, some reverb-soaked insects, a cacophony of alien voices jittering together in a choir. It goes a long way to make the dark, foreboding areas in the bunker even more unsettling. The more clear pieces sound like strings teased to their limits while slow-moving creatures shudder underneath them. It's impressive. Even the safe room music has a sense of sadness and resignation to it. The sound effects are incredible, with everything bouncing off the reverb so well that it's almost lifelike, but more distressingly, the sound effects are loud. The impact sounds of artillery shelling alone is so realistic that it feels like it's really happening, and the echo of a gunshot in a hallway is deafening, as it should be. The sound space is one of the most technically impressive ones I've heard in a long time. The directional audio and reverb are incredibly realistic. The monster sounds like it's moving all around you when it shuffles around on the walls, and thanks to that accuracy, it's almost as good at helping you pinpoint where it is as it can pinpoint where you are. The voice acting is a little limited as there are only a few characters, but Henri himself from his diary entries does a great performance the more entries you uncover. There's a lot less voice acting for other characters and background voices, but there's nothing to complain about there. The sound design is incredible, extremely realistic, and really impressive to hear through headphones. That's 3 Harry Masons. Gore. The game's gore is deeply unpleasant. French soldiers are ripped to pieces in the most unsettling way, and what's left behind is truly horrific. The gore provides a stark reminder to the men who failed to stop the beast, but also to the brutality of the First World War, since not all the corpses you see are products of the monster. The gore really stands out and was genuinely hard to look at. That's 4 Harry Masons. Story. The story begins in the midst of World War I, with Henri trying to rescue a friend who has fallen into a hole. Upon saving him, he finds himself in a German ambush, but despite the situation, awakens alone in the bunker. The story is almost entirely told through diary entries and environmental storytelling. The diary entries range from harrowing tales of the monster's first appearance to heartfelt confessions of guilt in wartime, and none of them were boring or pointless to read, with some being clues to progress and others providing interesting backstory. There's connections to the previous Amnesia games, especially Rebirth, which was neat to see. Generally though, the way the story was told was difficult to piece together, and I left the game with a lot of theories but not a lot of understanding. The real problem stemming from finding notes whilst trying to avoid being killed by the monster. I collected a large number of notes and photographs that still painted an incomplete picture, even though they were fun to stop and read, and I thought I collected quite a few. Whilst the game does encourage multiple playthroughs, there's clearly some pivotal stuff still lurking in my game for me to find on a second playthrough. Making the final score 4 out of 5 Harry Masons. The Bunker is a stark departure to Frictional's previous works, and it's left the story behind to present a more intense, isolated incident within the Amnesia universe, and it'll be interesting to see what becomes of it and the custom stories in the future. Again, I'd like to remind you this whole thing is down to my opinion in horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I escaped the monster alive, I didn't make too much noise and advise you don't either. There'll be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. And always go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night. Peace.